Hi, welcome to my channel. My name is Kim and I have been teaching Yin Yoga for a bit now, and I'm excited for you to join me in this moment on your mat. Go ahead and grab yourself a mat, or at least a easy place for you to be able to lie down and stand up a little bit for about an hour to an hour and 15 minutes, moving through several breathing and physical movement exercises. As you find yourself a space to be, gather any yoga props that you use, such as a bolster or blocks or an eye pillow. Or if yoga props are not something you currently have around you, gather a few pillows off of your bed or your couch and add a blanket underneath where your knees will be, as we will have a few hands on our knees and knees on the ground poses. Yin Yoga is a practice of moving intentionally through different movements without necessarily expecting any level of flexibility, physical fitness, or any of the things that you have as preconceived notions about what yoga might be. Those don't apply here. Any version of the pose is the pose. And if you've taken a class with me before, you've often heard me say that phrase, as well as noticing that when we find ourselves in two-sided poses, one side might be very different than the other. That's because your body isn't as symmetrical as maybe you would think or hope or expect, or Instagram could lead you to believe. We each live our days and our lives moving through the motions of what we're expected to do. Some of those motions allow different parts of our body to be strained or stressed in different ways than others. Sometimes that varies day to day, hour to hour, or season to season. As you find yourself moving through postures tonight that include two sides, please remember not to judge yourself, not to have expectations that are unreasonable for yourself, and also not to push yourself to a sense of pain. Throughout Yin Yoga, I instruct classes to kind of ride the wave of sensation. And what I mean by that is, if you were to rate sensation on a scale of 0, meaning exactly maybe how you feel right now, where nothing's exacerbated, nothing's stretched too much, you're just kind of here, to a scale of pain, if we wanted to give pain the number 10. We never want to get to pain. We never want to experience pain, and we never want to cause ourselves pain just for this purpose of growing. We might want to cause ourselves to move into sensation, to notice discomfort, and to notice what it can be like to sit with discomfort and ask it what it has to teach us. So find yourself maybe at about a 6, where 6 is sensation. Maybe you're looking to move a little bit deeper, so you move into a 7, but never really move yourself past there, because then you're bordering on the edge of pain, strain, and pushing yourself for the sake of pushing yourself, rather than sitting at that growth edge. So go ahead and find yourself in a comfortable seat, or lying down if you haven't already.
We're actually going to start in child's pose. So, welcome to your first Yin restorative class back post-COVID, in a not yet post-COVID world, but we're here, we're moving, we're hanging out. And so go ahead and bring yourself into child's pose in whatever way makes the most sense for you. Child's pose with a bolster is probably the most restorative option I can think of. So hands and knees, sitting your hips back onto your heels, and then sinking your chest down onto your bolster, arms out to the side of it. Maybe you prefer to wrap your arms around your bolster, whatever makes the most sense for you. And while we are here for about the next 5 minutes, I will kind of introduce the way in which I often like to teach these classes, add in some cues, and then offer an opening quote from someone that I often refer back to throughout my classes, who inspires me to get back up on the horse of life when I feel off of it, or just sit next to it for a while. And so wherever you are in child's pose, go ahead and notice the parts of your body that are touching the mat. Notice what your knees feel like. Notice what your elbows feel like. and begin to just get curious about what it's like to restart an activity with all of the different things that are around you, joining you, and notice what it's like to come into this space again. Taking an inhale breath and filling your lungs up. Maybe you notice your back expand. Maybe you notice your lower back. And it feels a little bit different than the last time you did yoga. Or maybe it feels great. Or maybe it feels a little bit tight because you've been seated all day. And then as you exhale, notice what it feels like to just sink down onto the bolster. Maybe your hips sink a little bit farther back towards your heels. Maybe you have one side of your face on the bolster and you notice what that cheek feels like. But continue just breathing, inhaling deeply, filling up, and then exhale, breathing everything out and letting yourself just sink, soften, and melt into everything underneath you. And we'll flow through about 10 postures tonight, some of them being two-sided. And whenever you find yourself feeling distracted, noticing sensation and wondering when things will be over or when we'll move on, just come back to this idea of taking a deep inhale and filling yourself up, and then taking a long exhale and letting yourself melt, soften, and sink down into everything that's supporting you. Over the last almost 2 years now, we've been in various positions where we've had to be the ones supporting ourselves, supporting others, supporting the world around us in unexpected ways. And so take this time tonight to just support yourself and let the props and the mat do the work. Allowing your body to move with your breath through different postures, always feeling free to stay in something longer if you'd like to, or come out of something sooner. Knowing that my practice of teaching yin and restorative is that any version of the pose is the pose. And so if you stay in child's pose for 60 minutes, that is your class tonight. The first and the most challenging step of the yin and of any sort of self-care practice is starting. And so we'll start in child's pose, move our way through and end in Shavasana on our back. And throughout each posture, we'll come back to our breath. Maybe we have a different relationship with our breath than we did 2 years ago. Maybe a deep breath feels more emotional than ever before because we understand what it can feel like when things change in our body. And so take a breath, and if you have one side of your head on your bolster, go ahead and use the next breath to flip over and place the opposite ear, opposite cheek on the bolster. And we'll just spend about a minute in silence here breathing. And as we breathe, I'm just going to introduce one of my favorite quotes that we'll start with from Dolly Parton. And I think today might actually be her birthday, according to at least one post I saw. So that wasn't planned, but in honor of Dolly Parton's birthday, a quote that I discovered early on in the pandemic when I was struggling to figure out my capacity physically, emotionally, with my time, was this one. She says, "I know who I am. I know what I can and can't do. I know what I will and I won't do. I know what I am capable of, and I don't agree to things that I don't think I can pull off. And for me, that's come back in different ways. Each line resonates in a different way, a different time. Sometimes it's important to remember that it's okay to start slow and build yourself back up. It's okay to know your limits and to state them. And it's okay if you know that you can say yes to some things and no to some things differently each day, each season, or each breath. So on your next breath, go ahead and stretch your arms back out, glancing your hands down onto the mat, feeling all 10 fingers individually press down into the mat. And then pressing your hands into the mat, shifting your hips up over your knees, coming into a tabletop position. Shifting the bolster to the side momentarily. And once you find yourself in a tabletop position, just begin to notice what it feels like to either be in this tabletop position or just face down on the mat without anything underneath you, with your legs stretched out behind you. And feel everything that's touching the mat now. Notice what it feels like to have your legs stretched out or have your knees planted down. Shifting a little bit side to side, maybe swaying out your hips, rocking a little bit. Bending and flexing your toes and your feet. And then the next pose that I will offer is going to be probably the most sensational posture of this practice, which I like to use to remind myself and anyone taking it with me what I mean by riding the waves of sensation. And it's going to be toes pose. If you know that this absolutely does not work for you, stay in the posture that you are in, or shift onto your forearms and come up into Sphinx pose. But if you're coming with me to toes pose, you'll come up onto your knees and sit your heels back onto your feet, similar to kind of coming up from child's pose. And then press your hands just briefly down into the mat. Tuck both of your toes underneath. Maybe this is where you stay. This was often where I stay after really stressful days in toes pose, because the bottoms of your feet might be screaming at you. But if you'd like to move into a little bit more sensation, maybe you come up onto spider fingers. Maybe you walk your hands all the way up your thighs. Maybe you get here and realize this is not going to work for you. Then you bring your hands back down to the mat. But we're just going to spend 3 minutes with our toes tucked under, noticing what sensation in the bottoms of our feet feel like. If you want to come all the way up onto your knees, you can do that. And that changes the sensation in your feet. But I like to attempt to somewhat sit back on my heels. Spend a couple breaths just deciding if you would like to be relaxed sitting up or having your hands down a little bit down the mat. And here I'm going to offer a 3-part breath exercise. And this 3-part breath is one that guided me through different waves and tsunamis of anxiety over the last couple years. And it goes like this. As you inhale, you begin to feel what it feels like to feel your inhale in your collarbones, in your chest, and then finally into your belly, feeling it fill up. Maybe you even bring your hands to your belly. And then as you exhale, it goes back out the same way, emptying your belly, flowing out through your chest, and then finally flowing out from your collarbones up through your throat. Sometimes I work with kind of guided imagery of a wave in this way. So I'm imagining that a wave is coming in through my nose, down through my collarbones, across my chest, filling up my belly with air. And then as it goes back out, my belly's emptying, my chest is becoming lighter, and then up through my collarbones and my throat, my breath is leaving. We'll just be here for a little bit longer. And yin practice, in difference from restorative practice, is about holding postures that are sensational. Restorative offers us the opportunity to relax in a similar way to yin, but yin sometimes, or oftentimes, the way I teach, can add sensation. And what I mean by that, that's important to differentiate, is that if your body is experiencing pain in any way whatsoever, please do not do what poses I offer. Please make changes. Please adjust yourself, add props, fidget, move around. But what I encourage people to do is spend the first minute or so noticing what sensations they feel, noticing where they feel them, noticing what it feels like to take a deep breath and see if you can just sit with that sensation, letting the exhale allow you to soften into it, and see if you can just be with it. Off the mat, we often have uncomfortable things that we have to face. We don't often have as many choices. And so practicing sitting with sensation on the mat can allow us to practice sitting with physical and emotional sensations off the mat. And so to come out of this, we will do this slowly. What I like to do is, if your hands aren't already planted, plant them back down on the mat, lean into them just a little bit so that you can untuck your toes very slowly. Bring the tops of your feet down to your mat, and then kind of pitter patter them as the blood flow shifts back into your feet. If you might be dehydrated, like I might be, you might get a foot cramp. So be gentle with yourself. And then walk your hands back. And we're going to move into a somewhat opposite pose called saddle pose. I like to do this with a prop. Some people prefer to do it without a prop. But what we'll be doing is basically the opposite of child's pose. And so the way I like to get into saddle pose, which I will guide us in with both of our legs tucked under. You can do it with one leg tucked under if you prefer, and then I'll let you know halfway through. But what I like to do is move myself forward a little bit, bring the bolster behind me in a perpendicular manner so that it's behind my lower back, kind of at my feet. Or rather, whichever direction, long ways on our mat. Yes, that way. That must be perpendicular. It's been a bit since I took a math class. But from this position, I kind of shift my heels out to the side, shift my seat between my heels so that I am maybe sitting on the mat. If that doesn't work for you, you can bring something underneath you. If you already notice that this is extremely uncomfortable in a negative way for your knees, go ahead and shift one leg out in front of you so that one leg is straight, one leg is bent. But if you'd like to try this with both legs bent, what we're going to be doing is placing our hands on the side of the mat and then walking our hands backwards. Depending upon your day, you might go all the way back and be able to open up and stretch quite sensationally across the front of your legs and your hips. Or you might walk your hands back and really like the way it feels to stretch across your chest. This is where your lower back needs to be. Maybe it's touching the back of the bolster and you want to adjust it a little bit closer. And this is a stretch that works for you. And you place your hands just kind of on the mat, kind of in a somewhat reverse push-up. Or maybe you come down onto forearms. Or maybe you come all the way down with your upper back resting completely on the bolster. And if you come all the way down, just make sure that your lower back doesn't experience pain. This is definitely a stretch that if you have been seated all day, like I have, or standing all day, it definitely reminds you of that. And so coming into this, you can either leave your hands and your arms down by your sides, or you get a great chest opener to just stretch them out to the side. Knowing that there's no snacks in your hands, but it's definitely the posture that could make someone think that there are. But stretching your arms out, closing your eyes, taking a deep breath in through your nose, seeing what feels like it expands. Does your chest rise? Can you feel your belly expand as you inhale in this posture? And then maybe you want to take an open mouth exhale and sigh everything out. Let yourself sink fully into the bolster. Maybe you rock your head side to side, letting some neck tension just melt away. And just be here, knowing that you have made it here. Everything that has happened before this moment, you made it through. With your breath, with your body. You did that, even if there were days when you wondered if you would. And sitting with that feeling, postures where we're facing up can often stir up a lot of emotion, can make us feel incredibly vulnerable, and can just rise a lot of things to the surface. And so if at any time tonight you notice that things are rising to the surface, they're causing your breath to maybe get a little more shallow, sit with that. Invite your breath to go a little bit deeper, inviting your body to just stay. And then try an open mouth exhale as you need to just literally let a little bit more go. Take 3 more breaths here in this saddle pose. And then I'll guide us from here. After your last exhale, plant your forearms and your elbows back down on the mat, bringing your arms back in if you have them stretched out. And begin to imagine yourself moving out of this posture. Don't move just yet, but imagine yourself pressing your elbows into the mat, tucking your chin into your chest, and slowly coming up, moving from your elbows to your palms, and then pressing your palms into the mat so that you can rise your upper body up. And then once you visualize that, go ahead and make that happen. And when we come back to the top, notice what your lower back feels like. And then in a way that makes sense to you, we will shift into butterfly. I like to shift to one side, slowly bringing kind of my heels out to the side, swinging them around. And on my way to butterfly, stretching my legs out in front and just bouncing them up and down, similar to what we did with our feet, just letting the blood flow, get back to a different pattern. And then from here, swinging to butterfly, either staying the direction you are or shifting, whichever works for you. And bringing the soles of your feet together in front of you, as close or as far away from your body as you would like. We will move to a forward fold in a moment, but I like to spend time in butterfly just giving myself a foot massage. And if you have never massaged your own feet before, this might feel very strange, but it's been an act of self-care that I have spent far more time doing than I expected. And the way that I like to do this in butterfly is to just take my thumbs, massage them into the bottoms of my feet, starting from my heels, moving up the arch of my foot, up to my big toe. Just noticing what the bottom of my feet feel like to give them a little massage. Maybe you want to move more to the middle of your foot, between your toes, back down your foot towards your heels. But just pay attention to what it feels like to offer this to yourself. To offer just a little bit of massage to things that literally keep us upright when we're up on our feet, that carry us through wherever we go. And then once the bottoms of your feet feel like they've gotten enough attention, I like to take the rest of my fingers and kind of shift them to the tops of my feet near my ankles and just kind of spider walk them down my feet, as in kind of what one teacher has called like the gutters of your feet almost. And just massage between your toes, up and down your feet, from your toes back to your ankles. I had never paid this much attention to the top of my feet until the first time I did this. But sometimes throughout the day, I would just spend time sitting here, massaging my feet, taking a minute, and just being grateful for all the ways in which my body miraculously makes everything work. Just giving it some love, taking a break, and paying attention to it. It can be very easy to get lost in the hustle and bustle, forget to pay attention to our body. And then once you feel complete, maybe you want to move up to your ankles for a moment. Just notice anything around them, notice any tension. And then we'll be in a butterfly forward fold for 5 minutes. And you are welcome to either keep your feet as they are or do this one leg at a time, which will create a different sensation and a different stretch. I'm going to do one leg at a time in I guess, not really a butterfly forward fold, but something similar, where I'll just keep one leg, I'll start with my left leg, tucking it in a little bit more and stretching my foot out, just directly out in front of me, noticing of how that feels on my hip, and then maybe shifting it out to a 45-degree angle. And then wherever you are, take an inhale breath. And then on your exhale, either keeping your hands on your ankle or just walking them out in front of you. Maybe you want to bring your feet closer. Maybe you want to put them farther away. But just walk your hands out and begin to bring your upper body forward. Notice as you do this, what your back feels like, your lower back, your mid back. Notice what it feels like to kind of grip the ground if you would like to stretch yourself forward a little bit more. And then find a position that you feel like you can stay in for 5 minutes. Using your inhales, create some space and fill up. And then using your exhales to sink and melt into that space. To make this more restorative, you can always add a bolster on top of your feet so that your chest and your head can rest on that. But just allow yourself to melt. Be with your body. Be with your breath. And be proud of yourself for choosing to be here. Letting yourself melt a little bit more with each exhale. And just be right here, right now. Maybe on your next inhale, you notice what it feels like to inhale with that 3-part breath, inhaling into your upper back, your mid back, and your lower back. And then just exhaling that wave back out from your lower back, your mid back, your upper back, and seeing if that exhale allows you to melt a little bit more or soften anything. And remembering that melting isn't always moving closer to the floor. Sometimes it's just softening into where you already are instead of holding anything. Letting something melt off of you. If you had one leg stretched out, it's time to switch to the other one. If not, you are halfway through. So if you're switching legs, you'll just guide yourself up. Do the opposite by bringing your right foot in this time, stretching your left foot out in front and then angling it to the side as you need. And then on an exhale breath, walking your hands out in front of you, bringing your upper body forward and melting back in. And later in the class, we'll do a couple more two-sided postures. And it's always important in two-sided postures to remember that, well, we might think our bodies look symmetrical. We use them in different ways throughout our day. And so expecting each pose to look the exact same on each side is expecting something that isn't necessarily realistic or even necessary. Maybe you drive long distances, and so your right leg gets far more use than your left leg if you drive an automatic vehicle. Maybe you have a desk situated with an external monitor, and so one side of your neck gets stretched in a way that the other doesn't, and so you notice that as you're in postures. Or maybe there's no explainable reason, and you just notice a difference. That's okay. Yin can be a great way to explore our bodies, be with them, and get curious about them. Not expecting them to do anything, not striving for perfection, just being here. Wherever you find yourself, similar to how we were in child's pose, go ahead and shift your palms back down onto the ground, pressing your palms, all 10 fingertips into the ground. And then just begin to press a little bit more so you can press yourself down, press your hands down in the interest of moving your upper body back up. Keeping your eyes closed if you have them, bringing your head up last, guiding your spine back up. And just take a couple shoulder rolls here. So inhale, bring your shoulders up to your ears. And then exhale, move them back and down your back. And do this 5 times more on your own. Rolling your shoulders up and back. Noticing how this feels across your chest. And throughout your day, I encourage you to try and do this every so often. Maybe your shoulders spend a lot of time crept up by your ears. So this forces you to realize how much distance there can be. We just kind of let them hang out down away from our ears. And then we'll just do 3 in the opposite direction once you're finished. So we'll inhale our shoulders back, bringing them up to our ears from the back, which is the opposite way that we typically do this. Do that a couple more times, rolling them forward, which might feel very counterintuitive, which will just awaken and activate our nervous system in a way that gets it out of its usual pattern. And then I'm also going to invite us to, while we're paying attention to our neck, whenever you finish rolling your shoulders, just pause for a moment, close your eyes, take an inhale breath, and then drop one ear to that shoulder. You can choose which one you start with. I'm going to drop my right ear to my right shoulder. Notice my neck crack a little bit. And notice what the opposite side of the dropped ear's neck feels like. So for me, my right ear's dropped to my right shoulder, and I'm noticing what the left side of my neck feels like. Try not to let that shoulder come up to that ear. Maybe you want to look down at your shoulder, eyes open or closed. Notice how that changes sensation. or look up to the ceiling, just paying attention to our neck. And spend 3 breaths in one of those 3 options. And then using an inhale, inhale your head back up to center when you feel complete. Pausing in the center for 1 breath cycle. And then we'll do the same thing on the other side. So this time I'll take an inhale breath, drop my left ear towards my left shoulder, not letting my right shoulder come with it as much as I can. And then looking down at my shoulder, noticing that I probably need to adjust my computer because my neck is not interested in moving as much on this side. And then looking up to the ceiling, feeling that different sensation. And choosing one of these postures to spend 3 breaths in. And once you've finished your 3 or more breaths, use an inhale to guide yourself back up. Noticing how you feel now. Just about halfway through our class together. Noticing what it feels like now to take a deep breath. Filling yourself up. And then take an open mouth exhale and sink a little bit more into the mat. We're going to come back onto our hands and knees briefly for a couple cat-cows and then move into pigeon pose. And so if you like to have your bolster for pigeon pose, keep it nearby. But go ahead and come onto your hands and knees into a tabletop position. Shifting your knees under your hips, hands under your shoulders. You can keep your toes untucked or tuck them depending upon how your feet feel. Don't worry, we're not going back to toes pose. We'll just go through 5 cat-cows. And so pressing your hands down into the mat, inhale and dropping your belly, looking either eyes open or closed up to the ceiling. And then exhale, pressing your hands into the mat, arching your spine, looking either down towards your belly or just down towards the mat, back towards your feet. And then inhale, dropping your belly again, looking up towards the sky, kind of in an opening across your chest. And then an exhale, arching your back up to the sky, opening across the upper back. Do this 3 more times on your own. If you like to look over one shoulder and the other, that can add in some fun, some side stretch. Everything is just a suggestion. Notice how your body feels. Flowing through 1 or 2 more times, depending on your preference and desire. And then once you feel like you've gotten as many cat-cows as you would like for now, maybe you want to add in some hip circles just briefly. And sometimes this can look like shifting your hips back towards your heels and just kind of like circling them around. Just do what feels intuitive to you and just like move in some circles or some shapes or some barrel rolls. Just like have some fun for about a minute or so. Just moving in ways that make sense. Give your body what it wants right now. and allow you to be here. Noticing stretches that feel great, noticing stretches that remind you of your day, remind you of what you love about yoga, and remind you of what you love about yourself. And then when you feel complete, come back to a tabletop position, winding and weaving your way back there through whatever you would like to do. And we will get ourselves ready to move into Pigeon. I always like to start this pose with my right leg forward, but you can start with whichever leg you would like. And to move to Pigeon from tabletop, what we'll do is we will just walk our hands, a handprint forward, and then pick up whichever knee is the one you would like to have forward first and move it towards that wrist. So I'm going to be moving my right knee towards my right wrist. And then I'm going to kind of swing open my left ankle towards my left wrist. It has never made it there, and I don't expect it to. If yours does, that's great. But swinging your left leg open so that you can stretch out, or swinging your right leg open so you can have that ankle moving towards the wrist. And then maybe you tuck your back toe just a little bit to shift your knee back. And maybe from here, you would like to add a blanket or something underneath the raised hip of the knee that's bent, because that's what you would like to do. Sometimes I add a blocker, a blanket here if things are tight. And with your hands pressed into the mat, take an inhale breath. Look up towards the ceiling, similar to that cat position. And then on an exhale breath, you can either come down onto forearms, down onto a bolster if you'd like, or onto palms and just drape your upper body forward. It can be really relaxing, restorative, and allow you to just fully embrace this posture to find somewhere to plant your forehead, whether that be a prop or your hands, or maybe all the way down onto the mat. But allow your chest to melt forward. Allow your forehead to rest. Any tension between your eyebrows to melt away. And take an inhale breath and feel what it feels like to feel a pretty strong sensation of opening across one hip and a sensation of compression across the other simultaneously. Maybe you notice sensation in a different part of your body. Just pay attention to that for a breath. And then on an exhale, let go of focusing on anything specific and just be here for a couple minutes. Melting down, dropping in, and resting. One of my favorite social workers, who you probably have heard of before, is Brene Brown. And I often like to include her quotes as well in various classes because they encourage me to think deeply, differently, and challenge me to just pay attention to myself in a new way. So the quote I have for us tonight is, "Only when we are brave enough to explore the darkness will we discover the infinite power of our light." And I think we've had a lot of opportunities to explore a lot of things that might have felt like darkness over the last few years. But here we are. We made it. And we've maybe discovered new powers within ourselves that we've brought into the light because we've spent that time exploring by choice, sometimes by necessity, other times. But here we are. And we've braved all of that. And we'll continue breathing and moving forward. We've just got about 30 more seconds on this side. We'll move into child's pose between the sides, so move there whenever you're ready, if you haven't already. If you'd like to move with me, we will shift ourselves back onto our palms. I like to tuck that back leg and inch the knee forward a little bit, press into the mat, swing my right leg because it was forward back. And coming through tabletop, if you would like to add some cat-cows, you're always welcome to. But we'll just spend 3 breaths back in child's pose before we move to the other side if you need to. And you can do this as a wide-legged child's pose or with your knees together. Just spend 2 more breaths here, feeling both of our hips in a similar position before we move into the second side of pigeon. Letting your forehead reground onto something on the mat or onto a prop. And then when you're ready, press your hands down into the mat. Come back up into that tabletop position. Move through cat-cow if you would like. Shift side to side, sway in a circle. Then we'll move to the second side. So this time I will be bringing my left knee towards my left wrist, and then that ankle is going towards my right wrist. Back leg is extending out behind me. And then from here, take that inhale breath, look up towards the ceiling, feel the opening maybe across your throat and your chest. And then use the exhale to guide your upper body forward. Maybe you want to add a bolster under your chest. Maybe you even want to guide yourself down and hug it in similar ways to we did child's pose in the beginning. And let yourself drop into pigeon on this side. Letting yourself explore, see what your body has to tell you tonight, and just sit with it. When I first started intentionally practicing yin, I cried through more pigeon poses than I think I ever expected or imagined I could, because I noticed that the alternative sensation of opening and compression simultaneously allowed emotions that I was maybe pushing to the side to come right to the surface. And being in a vulnerable position face down allowed me that sense of safety to explore that and be with that. And so as we get into our hips in this pose, know that maybe now, maybe later, maybe tomorrow, emotions might get stirred up. And as we do, I encourage you to just sit with them, explore them, breathe with them, and let them be. But don't let them take over. Allowing yourself with each exhale to melt into the support that's underneath you, whether that be your mat, a prop, whatever it is, just let it hold you. And then picturing yourself moving out of this pose on this side. Go ahead and press your elbows down into the mat if your forearms are down. Press your palms down into the mat. Guide yourself up. Tucking that back toe, shifting the knee forward as you need to. Coming back to tabletop briefly. Swaying your hips side to side if you need to, just let them come back to a similar position. Flowing through some cat cows if you'd like. Stretching out, opening up. Just seeing what feels different than it did 5 to 10 minutes ago. And then our last two poses together before Shavasana will be on our back. And so in whatever way you would like, make your way onto your back. Maybe you want to just shift to a side, adjust in any way. We'll be coming into supine twists and then a side stretch. And so if you would like to, in the twist, we will have our knees twisted on each side. So if you'd like to use your bolster to catch your legs, just have that sitting next to your mat. And so wherever you are, stretching your legs out in front of you, bouncing them up and down a little bit, adjusting in any way so that you feel comfortable sitting up. This will be our last seat before our final breath after Shavasana. So just take it in, notice what it feels like. And then you can plant your feet if you'd like to just allow yourself to guide yourself down all the way onto your back. Your knees up to the ceiling. Or you can keep your legs stretched out straight for a moment, knowing that after these two postures, this leg stretched out space is where we'll come for Shavasana. But to join me in this twist, what you'll do is plant your feet back down onto the mat with your knees up to the ceiling. Maybe you press them into the mat so that you can tuck your tailbone under a little bit and feel your lower back fully on the mat. And you want to sway your knees side to side, just letting things adjust, similar to how we would adjust through cat-cow. And then there's several options for this twist. You can simply choose which side you would like to start with, and in a moment, allow your knees to drop to that side, keeping your shoulders planted with your chest up to the ceiling. Or you can add in an extra layer of a twist with eagle legs. And so I'll guide you through the eagle legs piece. The other option is same thing without eagle legs. And so I'll be keeping my left leg planted, lifting my right leg up and crossing it over my left leg, similar to how you might cross your legs in a chair. And then I press my foot into the mat to lift my hips up a little bit, to shift them to the right, so that then I can drop my knees, both my knees over to the left, and my bolster will catch my knees tonight. Your knees might drop all the way down to the floor. You might decide when you have added this twist with the eagle legs that it's not for you, and just uncross your legs and have your knees stacked, dropped over to the left. Whichever posture makes the most sense and feels the best for your body, take that. And try and keep both of your shoulders planted on the mat with your chest facing up towards the ceiling. And so with your arms, you can either choose to place both your hands on your body somewhere, stretch them to the side, stretch them out to the side, or maybe stretch them up over your head. So we'll add in a little bit of a side stretch. Side stretch, chest opening, or just breath awareness. Any of the poses are the right pose for you. But see what an inhale breath feels like across the right side of your body. Can you feel your right lung inflating? Can you feel a stretch on the outside of the right hip as you inhale? And then as you exhale, can you feel that right shoulder drop a little closer to the mat and your knees drop a little bit closer on the left side down towards the ground? I like to finish with twists just as a way of kind of wringing out anything else that I want to let go of. Similar to how we might wring out a wet cloth when we're finished with it. To allow these twists to wring out anything from your spine, let anything else go, and remind yourself that it's okay to hold things as long as you need to, but it's important to let them go when you're done with them. And similar to Pigeon, twists can create opposing, contradictory, simply different sensations in different parts of our body. Just breathe into those sensations. Soften through your exhales. And use your breath as your guide to stay. Taking 4 more breaths. At one of those breaths, if you have your legs crossed, uncross them, but leave your knees stacked over to the left. And then when you feel complete on this side, what you'll do is maybe curl your knees in a little bit closer to your body, and then use your belly to guide yourself back up, untwisting as slowly as you want, slowly as you need, pressing both feet into the mat, shifting your hips back to the center, knees up towards the ceiling. Maybe you want to sway side to side, or maybe you want to move the bottoms of your feet to the outside of your mat and drop your knees in together for just a couple breaths, resetting before we do the same thing on the opposite side. When you're ready to move to the other side, move the prop that you had, if you had one, to catch your knees over to the other side of your mat. And then this time I'll be dropping my knees to the right. So I'm keeping my right foot planted, lifting my left leg up and crossing it over, pressing it down into the mat and shifting my hips a little bit to the left so that I can drop them over to the right while still keeping them on my mat. Noticing the differences in each side, not judging, just noticing. Taking an inhale breath and deciding where you'd like your arms. And taking an exhale and settling in. If you ever find yourself losing focus, just come back to that breath. What does an inhale feel like? What does an exhale soften? Maybe your inhales are deeper today than they were yesterday. Or maybe yesterday they were deeper than today. Your deep breath is your deep breath. And focusing on guiding yourself full of breath and letting it go is the purpose. not judging ourselves, not pushing ourselves beyond our limits, just being right where we are in this moment. Using your next breath, if your legs are crossed, to uncross them and leave them stacked over to one side. Spend a breath there. And then on an inhale breath, guide your knees back up towards the ceiling. Press your feet into the mat, shift your hips back to the center. And our last optional posture before Shavasana is Crescent Moon, or Bananasana, as some people like to call it. It's just an additional side stretch. You are ready for Shavasana. Stretch your legs out long and come on into it. If you'd like to join me in a side stretch, go ahead and also stretch your legs out long in front of you. And stretch your arms straight up above you, stretching your toes as far away from your fingertips and your fingertips as far away from your toes as you can. Just making yourself as long as you possibly can momentarily. Maybe it feels like a stretch, maybe it feels like a squeeze. And then on an open mouth exhale, just let everything sink down into the mat. Let something go and be stretched out long momentarily. To add the side stretch, what we'll do is first we'll stretch the right side. So lift up your left leg, move it to the outside edge of your mat. Lift up your right leg, move it next to it. Same thing with your arms, left arm to the left side, right arm following it. So now you're in kind of this banana or crescent moon shape where the center of your body stayed pretty much exactly where it was. And you might feel an incredible sensation across the right side of your body, across your rib cage, across your hips, arms, knees, ankles. If you'd like to add even more, you might want to grab one wrist with the opposite hand, cross one ankle over, experimenting with which ankle is on top, choosing which sensation you would like, and spend 5 breaths here. It's not a full 3 minutes in this posture, just 5 breaths. We'll do the other side. And then we'll spend a couple minutes in Shavasana. Noticing what an inhale feels like. And on an exhale, can you allow your upper back to get closer to the mat? Letting it sink, melt, and rest. Take one more inhale if you would like. Uncross your ankles, let go of your wrist. And then pick up one foot at a time, move it back to the center, followed by the other. You move both your arms in the same way or at the same time. Coming back to the center, choosing if you'd like to just stretch out long again or just rock and roll your ankles side to side momentarily. And then we'll do the same thing on the other side. So lifting your right leg up, moving it to the right side, followed by your left, right arm, followed by left arm, arcing over this way, noticing what an opening sensation feels like across the left side of your body, crossing your ankles, grabbing hold of your wrists if you would like, and spend 5 breaths here in this crescent moon, banana-like shape. A final guided posture before Shavasana. Take one more breath, filling yourself up. On an exhale, let go of your wrists, uncross your ankles if they're crossed. Then use your next inhale to move everything back to the midline, back to the center. And move in any way that you feel the urge to move before finding yourself flat on your back in Shavasana. I won't be guiding us in Shavasana in basically any way to allow yourself a couple minutes of silence. And so maybe you want to curl your knees into your chest and just rock side to side momentarily before stretching back out. Maybe you want to add a blanket on top of yourself or a bolster underneath your knees. But do what you need. I will watch the time. And in about 5 minutes, I'll guide us up to a seat to take a final breath together. Just letting yourself be. Don't worry or try and focus or fixate on anything. Just be here. I'll let you know when it's ready and time to move on. As you take your next breath, begin to come back to sensation in your body. You're wiggling your toes, noticing your fingers, maybe curling them in, noticing your wrists and your ankles, maybe rolling them side to side, curling and uncurling your wrists, and beginning to notice both of your arms, both of your legs, shoulders, hips, your belly, chest. Take an inhale, notice what it feels like to fill up your lungs once more on your back. Fill up your belly. Take an exhale and notice how your chest falls. You roll your head side to side on your mat, noticing the back of your head press down, sides of your neck as you roll your head side to side. And then we're going to move up to seated. You can do this as slowly as you would like. I like to do this by bending my knees, curling them in, and rolling over onto one side, keeping myself as cozy as possible. Spending a moment there, and then if I've rolled to my right side, I'm pressing my left hand down into the ground, using that as a guide to get myself up, and then catching myself with my right hand, but taking all the time you need on your side, curled in, cozy, and find your way to a seat, whatever a seat looks like to you. Coming back uprightish, rolling your shoulders as you need, stretching your neck as you need. And then place your hands somewhere that makes sense to you. Maybe you want to bring them palms together. Maybe you want to bring them on your knees or just have them in your lap. But just notice something about yourself, maybe emotionally or physically, that you haven't noticed in a while, that you're aware of right now. And thank yourself for taking time to be aware of how you feel, of what you're capable of, and that you made it back here to this practice that you've returned to, that's been here, that will always be here, and that your breath can guide you through at any time. We'll take one inhale breath together. Once more, filling up. Take an exhale through your mouth. And just take all the time you need to move into whatever it is that you are doing next with your day, with your evening. And know that this class will always exist for you to retake as many times as you would like through the recording. You can always come back to as much of it as you would like. And just remember how you feel right now. You made it. You're here. And your breath will be here with you. Thanks for taking this time and joining me in offering this.
Thank you for taking a class with me, taking this time for you, and being a part of my online offering of free yin and restorative yoga to anyone who needs a break. As per usual, since this is YouTube, I'm here to ask you to subscribe, like, and share this video with anyone you think who might enjoy the same break that you just took. And if you would like to financially support these offerings, feel free to check out the description or visit my website, unbrokencircles.com, and you can see various ways to support me through Venmo, PayPal, or sharing the offerings that I put out with others who might need them. Thank you for taking this time, I love offering this to you, to anyone who needs it, and I'm grateful that you took this time to be with yourself, with me, and I hope to see you again. Please feel free to leave a comment if you have any questions. Have a great day.